go on, another mystery. Dirgelwch arall. Maenhir. Now, this is the thing about archaeology is full of mysteries. It's great, and the fact that it's hard to resolve most of them is even greater sometimes. Maenhir. Now, then, this is far more obscure, to be honest with you. And the Maenhir is, we can debate for many hours what the Maenhir is. Maenhir is, it's a long stone. Maenhir, stone, long stone. There's a particular long stone cast to the side of the road between Pont ar-lein and Cwm Elan up on the top there. And this is the stone. It's quite famous, really, because there's a lot of stories. It was recorded in, what's his name? The shepherd who wrote the book, All Men Good and True, whatever it was called. His name escapes, but he's completely...
Yeah, Erwyd Howell.
Erwyd
Howell. Mm-hmm.
It's in his book, and he records a tradition that this stone used to stand the other side of the road, but was taken down and thrown to where it was, and it's a Bronze Age standing stone. So there's no evidence that that's true. There's a tradition that it was done, but there's no evidence that it's the case. Stone's a cracker, just up there, that line there is the road. That's the Cwm Elan road. You can't see it in this photograph. If there was ever a stone that should be a standing stone, that's the one. It's the right shape, length, size. It looks like it's been chosen to be a standing stone. And there are various contradictory stories about how it got where it is today. But certainly one of the best stories we've heard, and most recent, is just at the top of the photo. There's a bit of rough ground there. There's actually a hollow up there where you can see the shape of the stone where it was laying before it was moved to this point. And at some point in the last 50 odd years, I think, workmen working on the road decided they wanted to use that stone to fill a hole in. And the farmer who happened to be passing, the tenant on that bit of the estate, stopped them and said, no, you can't use that. That's the standing stone or whatever. And so they threw it down that side of the road. So having dragged it out with the JCB or something, they then had to throw it onto the other side of the road. But even that doesn't help us, because wherever the hollow it was laying in the other side of the road, probably wasn't its original position anyway. It had probably been pushed into there at some point in the past. So the oddity about it is that these are two very early maps of this area. Now you can see the old road. It goes through. Craiglist is named on the Ceredigion side. Nothing is named on the I was going to say the Radnorshire side. That was actually Montgomeryshire at the time. It's Radnorshire now. It used to be part of Montgomeryshire. That's around 1820. Then you go up to the 1830s. A little bit more detail. You've got Llanfedwyn is this hill here, and the Maenhir stone is sort of down here, down below the road here. But this bit of hill is very interesting. All this upland block here is incredibly interesting. And the surveys we've done in the last 10, 12, 15 years, and some of the aerial photography that the Royal Commission have done in the previous 5 to 10 years, brought out a lot of prehistoric archaeology that people didn't know about. And Llanfedwyn is we'll see it in the third presentation more about Llanfedwyn actually. But it's got some of the finest prehistoric archaeology in mid-Wales, I'd say, without any doubt. It's very, very interesting. But this is the 1888 1-inch map, and you can see the wider area, okay? But pretty much all the hills around there have got Bronze Age archaeology. But, Kistfine is Carnedda here. There's some massive stone cairns on the top here. But I know Graigylliest here, that's covered with small cairns, over here you've got Carn Groes. We've recorded several cairns there. It goes on and on and on. There's Bronze Age archaeology scattered everywhere. But our site is down here near the road, and there's nothing of notion on these early maps. But you get to 1889, you just decide just a corner. It's a very awkward joint on the map, just above that road there. You get the name Maenhir, okay, and a dot on the map, which is a mystery. We don't know why there's a dot there. We could interpret that as meaning that's where the Maenhir stood. Okay, we don't know. Because the odd thing is, when you go onto the 1905 map a few years later, the name Maenhir is more prominent, but the point where the dot was there, it's no longer there. So is that telling us the stone was originally there but was moved? We don't know. But it's a theory we're kind of working with. You can see the road is down here. The stone is now sort of down there somewhere, just been dragged down theoretically to the side of the road. So what we wanted to do was to do some geophysical survey again and get the year note once again. and started a little project through Elan Links to use the geophysics to see if we could identify the original site of the stone, because it's possible that we could do that, because if it was a standing stone, it would have been set into a hole, and the geophysics theoretically could show us where that hole, the disturbance had been, where the hole was, or if it had been dug out, that disturbance may show up. But also standing stones tended to mark things, more than they seem on the surface, because they tended to be cremation burial sites gathered around them. So theoretically, you could find through the geophysics evidence of further disturbances. Okay, so we were hopeful that the geophysics would help us to identify the original site of the stone. So we went out on a very gloomy day with a few friends. It was an open invitation, but our two stalwarts, Vic Pardo and David James, came up. We joined myself and Jenny and Ian Brooks. There's the stone again. You can't see the road. You can see better in the shot. That's the hollow where the stone had been dragged from, where it was laying before it got to where it is now. So we had a fun time. It's a fascinating landscape, this, and the views are tremendous from this site. And if you put your thinking of prehistory, if you wanted to develop a site as a ritual, funerary ritual site that could be appreciated by travellers passing through the landscape, this is a great place, or from where the dead could rest and survey the territory around them. This is, you've got the views down the Ystwyth are fantastic from here. But this is, you can see Ian and Vic here pegging out the first 20-metre grid square. We're on the main road, so people could see us, and people did stop and talk. The family who farm here came to have a chat and told us quite a lot about the family traditions, because the family really do believe, and they've been there for several generations, their belief is that it was a standing stone that was moved. That's kind of the origins of the story, really. And we've no reason to doubt them. It's just a question of how do you prove these things, really. Worth bearing in mind that from Maenhir, Carneddau and Llanfedwyn are off to the right of this image. But when you look down from all those sites, look down that valley, in the distance is Copper Hill, which we know was being mined for during the Bronze Age. So we know there is a Bronze Age population living in this area. So it's not unreasonable to think that this hill had significance to them. And where they lived, we're not sure, but we suspect this is where their dead were being buried, or one of the places their dead were being buried anyway. So yes, we had a very pleasant day, David and Jenny and so forth. And you can see how close the road is. Again, behind them, Ian is in a hollow. That's the hollow the stone came out of. Just make that point. But it's a difficult one. There's so much reed growth on this site that Ian had great difficulty undertaking the survey. It was a large part of it were nigh on impossible, and you'll see with his results now. And that really did put a bit of a damper on the exercise, to be honest with you. The sun did come out, but yeah, you can see from the images it's a bit of a struggle. I will not dwell on that for the sake of time, really. But what we did get out of at the end was a lot of fuzz, very different to Llest Abercython, you can see. And in the image on the right, you can see the reddish shaded areas A and B. The reeds were so thick that they've disturbed everything. The resistance, as it were, to the survey there is clumps of reeds and mess, really. It's very wet as well. But there is one little point of interest. You can certainly see it's an L-shaped square, but certainly in that area there seems to be a slightly circular feature. And Ian is good at picking features out of these images. It takes people like ourselves a lot longer to get our eyes focused on them. But he's clearly got that there. Sorry, the B actually is where I think in the past vehicles have been driven up onto the common. There is actually a little bit of a gully there where quad bikes possibly, or even council workmen looking for big stones have disturbed it slightly there. But that is one thing that's come up. So we've certainly got a feature that's worthy of further exploration. It's not far from where the stone was lying. The dot on the map would be somewhere further up this corner here, and it's probably in the area that's disturbed by the reeds. So really, this again remains a mystery. What is the significance of Maenhir? Is it a Bronze Age standing stone? Is it a marker for a Bronze Age cemetery? the name itself tells us there's grounds to believe that. A hill doesn't get a name like Maenhir, or the slope of the hill doesn't get the name like Maenhir for no reason at all. But again, we're going to be very pushed to prove much more, but we won't prove anything else with the geophysical survey. Some limited excavations across that, look at that circular feature to see if there is anything going on there, and try to pin down an area where that dot is on the map, and maybe take out a square there and excavate, take the turf off and see what's underneath it. Can we identify the setting, the socket where a standing stone stood? Those are things we can pursue. But again, unfortunately, the tradition as it stands remains a tradition. And I wouldn't say we're none the wiser, we're a little bit wiser, but we're still tantalizingly far away from the truth, I'm afraid.
The rushes and the reeds, which prevented a sort of like a clear survey, could they have been cleared with permission from the tenant farmer and a better result got?
Jenny?
Yes. If they'd been, they could have been sized and sort of raked off, and that would have helped then with the survey. It's the particular, he couldn't do the resistivity survey here. The resistivity survey is the one that's got the prongs that you have to lift the whole thing up and then stick it down into the ground, and that is just impossible with all the reeds there. But that may have been then more possible. The one he's doing there that Paul's showing is the magnetometry survey. So he doesn't have to keep putting stuff down the ground. So all he has to do is hold that and walk up and down the lines that are laid out. So certainly clearing the rushes would help. But we didn't do that in this case.
Thank you.
I think that we are always sensitive about leaving as small footprint as possible, to be honest with you. I mean, you'd have to be quite, it could be done, but that would be a bigger project, and it would, I think we were quite happy taking our chances of what we could do at this stage at a fairly low level to see if that brought anything out immediately. But we did learn more, certainly. We certainly, especially talking to the farmers, a lot more detail was put on to where the story came from and the more details about the story. So that was a positive thing.
Well, and we pinpointed where the stone had come from on the other side of the road, which I don't think anybody had really articulated before. Whether anybody had actually known that but not said it, but we could actually, and it is very much where the stones come from. You can see the shape of the stone. It's not just, there's a hole there and it might have come from that. You can actually see the shape of the stone where it was lying flat. Yeah.
So yes, it was. But again, the objective here is in future is to have a small scale excavation to target some of the features that have been identified, involving the community. But we'll talk more about that as we go on, because obviously there's a COVID issue that has got in the way of all that. Yeah.